G'day guys, Mac with the Circle, and today we're going to be looking at a whole bunch of 40k and specials game units that you can use in your Horus Heresy armies. Because, you know, Forge World's expensive, and people keep saying to me, hey, I want to see what units I can use that are cheap plastics. Well, if you're Australian, you're screwed. But in the rest of the world, there are lots of options of models you can use that already exist in the 40k range and will fit perfectly well into your 30k armies. Last time we looked at this subject, we looked at a bunch of Space Marines and different Space Marine chapter units which would work really well as Legion units, mostly characters in the case of the Legions. This time out we're going to look at Demons of the Ruinstorm, we're going to look at Militia / Solar Auxilia, and we're also going to look at the Mechanicum. Now, first one out we're going to look at is of course the Demons. Now the Demons in 30k are a bit of a funny one. There are Demons you can ally in with the Word Bearers, but the main list of demons is Demons of the Ruinstorm. And Demons of the Ruinstorm is interesting because it is not aligned with any one god. There are certain rules you can take that align you in a direction of a god, but you're not beholden to just running units of that god. And there is no animosity or enmity based on the type of models you're using. This means you can really go wild. So for instance, you could run Khorne Blood Crushers as a Demon Cavalry unit, and run Fiends of Slaanesh as Demon Brutes in the same list, and then run Fleshhounds as Demon Beasts. You could then run Soul Grinder as a Greater Demon Behemoth. You could run, if we go down, maybe Scarbrand as your Demon HQ, your Greater Demon option, and then run 3 Khorne Bloodthirsters as Greater Demon Shrikes. You could have Feculent Nullmaws as the spawning points, put them on 5-inch diameter bases, and then the perfect size for it. What you do with Demons of the Ruinstorm is really just limited by your headcanon, what you can bring to the table. Me personally, I prefer to go more with the Forge World style, so I like the idea of combining something like Bloodletters with the claws of Demonettes, so that it's more similar to the Demon Brutes. But that's just one idea I've had among many. What you do with it is ultimately up to you, and that's what makes the Demons of the Ruinstorm such a great list. There's even a lot of fantasy units that you could put into the list and would work really well. Where I would draw the line with Demons of the Ruinstorm is probably units that are armed with real weaponry, such as ranged weaponry like firearms, armoured infantry, people wearing a lot of clothing, that kind of thing. Anyone that's sort of semi-naked, using very primitive weaponry, works really well in Demons of the Ruinstorm. So moving on from there, we get to the Mechanicum, and the Mechanicum's an interesting one because half of the stuff pretty much slots straight into a 30k army, and the other half is atrocious. So for instance, the Sulphur Hounds, Stratoraptor, Sterilizers, keep all that crap well away from 30k because it just won't fit into a Mechanicum list. Maybe you could run the Stratoraptor as an Arvis Lighter or something, but it's really pushing the point, and I don't like that model. But that's just me. Maybe you love it because just a sociopath, I don't know. Seeker and Ruststalkers, Electro Priests of both kinds, Infiltrators, they all work well as Myrmidons. But I would advise, if you're going to run them as Myrmidons, either the close combat variety or the range variety, at least do some conversions to make them WYSIWYG. Don't confuse the people who are probably already confused playing as your Mechanicum army by having a bunch of units that are just stock 40k models with no conversion and they represent different things. People will get so confused. Give them obvious weapons. So for instance, attach plasma guns to the Corpuscari Electro Priests in order to show that they're Myrmidons with phased plasma fusils, for instance. When it comes to the Skitarii, yes, Skitarii fits straight into 30k. And in fact, they work even better if you do take the effort to buy the Forge World upgrade kits and make either Skitarii Peltist or Skitarii Hoplites, who are both really good. One of them, in fact, is the ultimate anti-vehicle unit in the game because they're all armed with haywire guns, which, on a 2+, strip a hull point, on a 6 cause a penetrating hit, and they're very, very strong. Then the further you go down, you get to things like the Castellan robots, where, okay, in a pinch you could use them as something like Arlatax, Domitar, Castellax, depending how you convert them up. I don't really like the Castellan robot, but I would not refuse to play against someone who used them at all, because my problem with them is not as a 30k model, my problem with them is only because I don't like the aesthetics of the model. But the guy who's with them, he's a really cool Tech Priest, and when it comes to Tech Priest, you're spoiled for choice here, with the Tech Priest Dominus, Belisarius Call, the Tech Priest Engine Seers, Tech Priest Manipulus. All these guys work really well as either elite option Tech Priests, or as special characters like Caleb Decima, or obviously as priests in their own right leading your army, perhaps an Archmagos. The vehicles such as the Scorpius Dune Rider, Disintegrator, the Dune Strider, the Iron Strider, none of that stuff really works. Perhaps you could do something with the Iron Striders and the Sidonian Dragoon to make them work, but I'm not convinced. The Onager, though, that I really like, because that I think you could work in either as a Thanatar proxy, again with some conversion, or one I've always wanted to try but haven't, is replacing the weaponry on it with a Basilisk or a Demolisher type cannon, and using it as a Mechanicum version of the Basilisk or Medusa, because Mechanicum can take those units. So wouldn't it be great to see a representation of those vehicles that obviously shares those Imperial aesthetics, but instead of being a tracked primitive tank, it's a high-tech walker? That could be something that is really fun that you could do with an Onager Dune Crawler, giving it a big Basilisk cannon instead of little autocannons and missile launcher on the right-hand side there. Not saying it would work, but in my mind it would, and I think it might be something fun to try for people. Lastly, the Cataphon Breaches. I don't really see a place that these guys would fit into the Force Org chart. Whilst in theory, a real sadist could maybe turn the Taraxi Skystalkers into Thalax, using the wings on them to represent the jetpacks of the Thalax. I don't think that the Cataphron really fit into any group. I wouldn't use them as Vorax, I wouldn't use them as Myrmidons. They're just too big for Myrmidons, they're too different to Vorax. I can't find the happy place for them, but maybe someone has found a real good use for them. Personally, I think using their bodies, using their lower bodies with the tracks as proxies for rapier batteries is a much better idea. And that leads us, of course, into armies that use rapier batteries, such as the Astra Militarum, which in 30k you have two flavours of currently, which is the Imperialis Militia and the Solar Auxilia. Now, the Solar Auxilia don't really gain anything from the 40k plastics range. Everything the Solar Auxilia want, they already have in their list from Forge World. There are, of course, things like all the super heavy tanks, which are available to the Solar Auxilia, and so, hey, 40k plastic, but perfectly acceptable in 30k. And then you get to the Bulgrins and the Nork Deadog Ogren squad, neither of which I think work well for Charonites. The Bulgrins are, of course, closer to Charonite Ogrins in that they've at least got the heavy armor and such, but it's just something that doesn't quite work about them. For Imperialis Militia, though, wow, the whole range is pretty much good to go. Any units that are here you could use, and they would work perfectly fine in Imperialis Militia lists. The only exceptions being perhaps the Valkyrie, Vendetta, that kind of thing. But they could be modified or tweaked in order to suit the list better, perhaps cutting them down to make something like an Arvis Lighter. I wouldn't suggest it. You'd probably be better off just going and getting the Resin Flyer from Forge World in that case. On that note, don't forget there are also Specialist Games units that you can also incorporate into your 30k armies. So something like the Palatine of Forces or the Van Sars look like they would make really good Tech Guild militia. Survivors of the Dark Age, for instance. They're expensive, yes, but in the Survivors of the Dark Age list, you're not really going for huge quantities of infantry like you might be with some of the other lists, where perhaps you might just run heaps of Chaos Cultists. In the Survivors of the Dark Age lists, what you're looking for is you're looking for more elite-looking infantry that have that superior weaponry, superior armor that the provinces provide to them in that particular list. And you're also going to be running a lot of units like 40k Land Raiders, 40k Rhinos. So those are options available to you. If you ran a cult militia list and you were going down the trader path of things, yeah, you could load up on, say, the 40k Chaos Cultists, which I'll quickly bring up. Just a tick. Of course, there are many varieties of cultists you have to pick from. You could go for the Plague Zombie type and use Death Guard Poxwalkers. You can go for the typical Chaos Cultists there. They're both perfectly acceptable options. There are also others available, such as in the Zench list, you have the Kiarak Acolytes, all of which will be perfectly acceptable. Doing an army using the Chaos Cultists, although there are limited builds to them, on the right hand side there, combining those with the Corpse Grinder Cult Gang to represent some of the more elite or HQ or elements of the list would be pretty fun. A Delaque Gang or Delaque Gang, depending how you spell that. They work really well with Zench or Slaaneshi forces because there's just something off-putting and creepy about them. So plenty of options here. The Jotun H-grade Industrial Servitor Ogrins, they would make pretty good Charonite Ogrins, actually. Just the fact that they're being mutilated and they're wearing this more heavily armoured suits, possibly an option right there that you could run them as. The Slave Ogrin Gang is a great example of that. So in the Slave Ogrin Gang itself, you've got a whole bunch of mutated guys, or mutilated guys, that would probably work in a Solar Auxilia force if you wanted to go a bit cheaper than what it costs to go to the Forge World Solar Auxilia Ogrins. That said, owning some of those Ogrins, they're really nice models, and it's probably worth just buying those. But yeah, these are all options available to you. When it comes to the plastics, as long as what you've got represents your force really well, it's pretty much a who cares what you use. Where people go wrong is taking stock 40k units, putting them into a 30k army, and they're doing something like wearing full Primaris armor sets, and they're a head taller than all the other Space Marines, they're covered in Aquillas and Purity Seals and stuff like that. And immediately people go, oh, what the frick is going on there? Just avoid that. That's pretty much all you have to do to keep people happy. You want to use 40k Rhinos, 40k Land Raiders. No one's going to complain about that. Just give a crap when you make them. Put on Heresy Era doors on them, or put a Heresy tank crew in the top of it. Have some justification maybe for the Land Raider and say, oh, it's a early prototype of the Mark III Land Raider, for instance. And people probably go, oh, okay, whatever. Whereas if you turn around and it's just blatantly 40k, then people will go, no. Demons of the Ruinstorm's a great example. This is one of those armies where you can take the blatantly already 40k and Age of Sigmar units and just use them. Go for it. Fill your boots. For me personally, I'm going to use a Scarrick Bloodborne. I believe it is the giant dude from Forge World. I'm going to use one of those probably as my Greater Demon Behemoth. Because why not? He looks the part. He's giant and he has that feel of the army where he's sort of more cornate, which is the feel I'm going for, a cornate Slaaneshi mix. And I think you'll fit in quite well. So this is just some of the things that go through my mind, and these are some of the ways I can see people using these units in their armies. Anyway, I hope that helps you out. Make with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.